The council will be in order. I want to welcome the council to our April 24th meeting. I'd like to also have a special welcome to our city manager and city attorney and city clerk for their attendance today, along with all the senior staff that is here at every council meeting and certainly is part of the prep work that goes on behind the scenes. Then I'd like to welcome everyone from the general public this afternoon. We do have people from the community that like to watch firsthand the proceedings of the City of Cedar Rapids, and so we welcome you this afternoon. And then finally, we do have people that like to tune in over the television and watch the replay of these meetings. I know Councilman Shield is one that likes to do that, but the general public members do, so we want to welcome everyone from that standpoint. We do normally start our meetings out with a prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, but I think I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Monica Vernon for a
something.
Point of personal privilege, I guess.
Well, thank you, Mayor. At your State of the City speech, you ask us all to fall in love with Cedar Rapids. In fact, you ask all of the Cedar Rapidians to fall in love with Cedar Rapids. And we noticed that you got a little flack from that. So we wanted to stand in solidarity with you today and let you know that we, too, love Cedar Rapids, and we love you. We love what's going on, and so we thought we'd all wear our T-shirts. We got these T-shirts to wear in the parades and festivals. We found out that a lot of times when council shows up to parades or festivals, people don't know it's the council, and we've been there, and we've been doing all kinds of stuff. So we thought we would wear our I Love Cedar Rapids T-shirts this summer. So now you have your official copy, and that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. And you look good, even you, Councilman Swore.
Hey, especially me.
Our prayer this morning will be by, or this afternoon will be Police Chaplain Ken Glandorf. So please rise for the prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Let us pray. God, we thank you for this day, and we pray for this meeting of the Cedar Rapids City Council. We ask that the work that needs to get done will be accomplished and that everything will be done decently and in order. And we will not also forget our men and women overseas, especially those in harm's way. We pray for their protection and that they would safely come home. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chaplain, and thank you, Council, and you look good in the T-shirts, and as Monica said, I did speak at the State of the City earlier this year and did talk about having citizens fall in love with Cedar Rapids, and one of the things that I try to do at each one of the council meetings is review some of the good news that has happened in our community since the last time we met council, and and again, the list is much longer than I have time to review, but I wanted to really highlight 5 things briefly for you, Council, and for the citizens. You know, during the last presidential election, the word hope was thrown around a lot, and that really is a pretty important word, and I think it's pretty significant here in Cedar Rapids and around the country. But on Sunday, I had a chance to be out at the corrections facility on 29th Street, and we proclaimed this week as Crime Victims' Rights Week. And a small park was dedicated out there for crime victims, and the Leo Ware Victim Memorial Garden. We were out there with probably about 30 or 35 people, many family members who were unfortunately were the victims of a homicide of some sort. So it was great to see those people, and each one of the people that spoke all really talked about hope and how important that word was for them in their recovery. And then I had a chance to go out to the Cancer Society. They had a big gala and fundraiser, and again, a lot of people there that had cancer and just their hope of recovering from cancer and dealing with cancer. And that organization raised over $200,000 in one night between auctions and silent auctions for cancer research in this community. And then I have a chance to go to two youth events. One was on a Friday night. It was on the 13th of April. It was an event over at Washington High School called Jamnesty. And it's an organization that raises some money and awareness for Amnesty International. Amnesty International is a worldwide group that really kind of highlights people that political prisoners and people that have been limited in their ability of free speech. And it was amazing to see all these high school kids performing, whether it was instrumentals or their vocal, and the talent that was there. At the same time, the social conscience of the group as they were trying to highlight different political prisoners around the world. And it was quite interesting to see they led the whole thing, these youth here at Washington High School. And sometimes we lose a little faith in what the next generation is going to, where they're going to lead us, but it was a great event. And then that very next morning, as part of the NAACP, there was an organization for young African Americans called Think Tank. And it must have been about 60 young African American kids, male and females, that gathered on a Saturday morning, and I had a chance to open it up, but they had a variety of speakers there throughout the day, and it was great to see these young kids being mentored. Really is great for these young people to get involved. So two events where, I was really, really impressed with the young people of this community, and gives me great hope. And then finally, our governor signed the Growth and Revenue Initiative that really gives our community hope for future flood protection from that standpoint. So I could go on, Council, but those were 5 items that I wanted to point out to you. So before we get into our public hearings, we have 2 presentations. First, I'd like to bring to the podium Mr. Alan Rabin, who will come and give a short presentation, and then he's going to give an award to the City of Cedar Rapids. And I'd like Councilman Pat Shea and Mayor Pro Tem Monica Vernon to join me when we have that award. Alan?
Here? Great. We're representing the National Environmental Hall of Fame. We've given awards to top environmentalists, including Harrison Ford and Pierce Brosnan, Ed Begley, Art Linkletter. And we've also put together the world's largest environmental and calendar quilt, which includes the 12 top trends to help planet Earth. So there's one for each month, endorsed by top environmentalists nationwide. And we've completed, Jeanette Farron completed the section for Cedar Rapids, world's largest calendar quilt. They'll be joined together to these 12 quilts that were displayed at the American Quilt Show in Des Moines next April. So it's 66 feet wide. It's going to be maybe 1,000 feet wide. And it's to help bring to perspective as to what we need to help go green. We gave an award to the city of Des Moines for their platinum lead library, and so it's only fair that we give an award to the Cedar Rapids Platinum Green Library. That's going to be groundbreaking ceremony, I think just happened. Was that correct? Yeah. And we have other awards we've given, like to the city. We just came back from our Earth Day event, and we gave an award to Mayor Daley and the cities of Naperville and Aurora and Evanston and Highland Park. And so we want to recognize the city of Cedar Rapids for their platinum lead library. And I'd like to, if the representatives from the library can come up and the mayor and receive the award on behalf of the city.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. If everyone could join us here in the well, and if Mayor Pro Tem Monica Vernon would, along with Pat Shea. Both Monica and Pat were very instrumental in the selection of the library at the True North site, and have been certainly active since that time as we've undertaken the construction of that facility. So Bob and everyone from the that was out there earlier, come on down. We'll do this over here, Alan. We're going to have to scooch in here. We have a wide-angle lens. Here, Monica, I'll let you hold that.
We're dedicating the exhibition here to Nancy Cook, who is my best friend, who passed away, unfortunately, about a year ago. And after this, Matthew, her son, is going to be saying a few words about her.
Okay, I'll pass the mic to Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor Corbett, for accepting this award today, notifying the environmental conscientiousness happening within Cedar Rapids today. And the exhibition out there is dedicated in my mother's memory on behalf of her family and friends here. We're very honored to have you host this exhibition. She was a true advocate for world peace and understood that those roots not only lie with humanitarianism but environmentalism. She grew her garden organically along with some other daily environmentally conscientious practices. And she, in the past, worked very closely with Alan and Catherine to develop some of the and refine some of the ideas used today in their environmental exhibition. Thank you.
Nancy was the muse for our business. This is a permanent traveling exhibition in Cedar Rapids, and it's going to be growing yearly. And I hope we'll probably take it down in a few minutes, but if you have a chance to see it, it would be great.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Matthew. And thank you for joining us, and congratulations to the library.
Thank you very much.
Jeff, would it be okay at this point in time that we bring up Chief Yonker to give a short presentation?
That'd be very appropriate, Mr. Mayor. The chief is ready.
Okay.
I did want to say before the chief makes his remarks, he'll largely be addressing some of the violence that we've seen in Cedar Rapids in recent time. But what I also wanted to add is that the chief has been with the department for a number of years. He's been most recently our patrol captain, and he's been given the responsibility of serving as our interim police chief. And I can tell you that I have a great deal of confidence in Chief Yonker. He comes from patrol. That's his roots, and so he's very familiar with police work, with the streets, with responding to violence, as well as leading officers. So I have a great deal of confidence in Tom, and I'm very pleased to have Tom serve as chief for this period.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Chief, you're in order.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Just like to give you an update on the recent gun-related crimes that we've had and then the homicide that we've had recently. The first one would be the C Street Southwest and Rapids Avenue Southwest shooting that happened on March 29th. Just to give you some background on that, the victims that were injured are not cooperating with the investigation. The victims may have known their assailants, and the case is still active, but we are coming to the end on the leads that we already have without victim participation or cooperation. The second one would be the Woody's homicide that happened on April 16th. This homicide is solvable, and the investigation continues. The Investigative Bureau continues to actively follow up on leads, interview witnesses, and process evidence that was recovered. Once again, the victim may have known his assailant in this incident also. So just to stress that this is not just something that two people come across each other, never saw each other before. There is some nexus. They know each other in some way, some relationship. The shooting in the 2000 block of 5th Avenue Southeast that happened on April 17th. The victim is cooperative with that in that investigation, and the case is moving forward quite quickly and will probably end up in an arrest. The victim knew his assailant on that one also. And then finally, the shooting most recently, the 311 Kirkwood Court Southwest number 1, happened on the 20th of April. One suspect has already been charged and arrested. That was from last night. Other movement in the case is continuing, and victims did know persons that were part of the suspect's group. May have not known the actual people that came to the door, but they knew their third party, whatever. They knew each other in some sort of fashion, some relationship. First and foremost, I just want to say that the city is safe. The officers for the PD, men and women, are doing their job. And if we have issues, just like we did with the shooting out at Kirkwood or anyone else, we started to lock down schools immediately, including Kirkwood, Four Oaks, and Prairie. I know that the city, the school district also began to do a light or a lockdown on the exterior doors on their own. So we're going to notify the public, and we're going to keep them apprised if it's imminent danger. So we will let them know. Complete investigations do take time, so we ask for patience from both the council and from the public. The officers, the investigators, the detectives, the commanders are doing the right things. They're making good decisions, but you just can't resolve it in 60 minutes like a TV show. It takes time to build the case and to have a case that's going to be worth something. We want to serve the victims, first and foremost. We want to protect the integrity of the investigation, and we want to bring the offenders to justice and also have a solid case that can be prosecuted so that they're not in and immediately released or found not guilty. All these incidents involve an assailant that is known or has some relationship with the victims once again. Not random events, random persons. There is some sort of relationship, just to remind you. Finally, the true tragedy of all this is the loss of a life and then the damage done to the victims and their families. And just a little bit of background, we are on an uptick for shooting reports. 2010, we only had 3 where we take a report. And just to give you a little bit of background on that, we have shots fired calls that go out a lot. It could be, fireworks, it could be a backfire, it could be something like that. We take a report where we can prove it up, or there's evidence to believe, shell casings, witness report of an actual gun being discharged, things of that nature. 2010, we had 3. 2011, we had 11. And 2012, we're already at 18. So there is an uptick. And, we do preventative patrol. We do intense patrol. We located a gun last night in a vehicle. Just before I came to council, we were looking for a person walking with a gun secreted on their person. So we're doing our jobs just to make you aware and to have confidence in us that we're getting the job done.
All right, thank you, Chief. Would you have any time for questions at this point in time?
I can try to discuss ones that are not specifically investigation related.
Councilman Shea.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief. I spent 3 years as an assistant county attorney, and it was the greatest job. But there's always the problems was finding witnesses, finding willing witnesses,
Right.
and then having credible witnesses. So I know how any investigation is fraught with those kind of challenges, because even though once you complete the investigation, you have to take that evidence to the county attorney's office where again that evidence is reviewed to see how strong a case you can make. So I think probably all those crime shows do you a disservice because we all think that on Law and Order the crime happens at 1 minute after the hour and it's solved at 59 minutes after the hour. So I understand and I appreciate that it takes time to build a credible case because at the end of the day you want to get convictions for those that did it. And I think the other thing is important because I got an email from somebody and these aren't random crimes. I mean, this is not like Columbine or in Norway. I mean, these are crimes where the shooter, I guess the assailant knew the victim, and so those are very different. The one happened in our neighborhood just last week. My daughter walks by that twice a day, and I feel safe, and so I have every confidence in you, and I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Councilman Shields, did you have a question for the chief?
No, just a comment as chair of the safety committee. I get to know some of the police officers and firefighters maybe a little closer than others may, but there's never a question in my mind the dedication and public servants that we have working for the citizens of Cedar Rapids, and I think they do a great job. The unfortunate thing, we're in an uptick in misbehaviors. Obviously, it's hardly misbehavior when we start shooting at each other. Borders on the realm of insanity almost. We think that's a way to resolve issues. So I think it's up to everyone's responsibility living in Cedar Rapids to help the police department, help the fire department solve these things. Because a lot of times they're not there when it happens. It's their job to figure it out after it happened. So you need folks to cooperate with them. And that's what I would just encourage. If we want to see these solved, then we're going to have to do our job and step up and assist them. So thanks again, Chief, and Fire Department also.
Thank you, Justin. Monica, you had a question?
It's really not a question, but just a comment. I used to look at, you guys as solely responsible for getting all this figured out, and I've really realized that there are so many of us, as Justin says, that need to work together. And one of the things that I've really learned after being on council for 4 years is that, if you think about it, when people move to our community who are going to be engaged in crime, they rarely invest in a home. They generally will rent an apartment. We have wonderful people who rent apartments in this community. I have to say that first. But I do think that I'm very interested in continuing to look at how we register or license our landlords and what we require of them. And Council, I'm continuing to be very interested in some sort of national background check. And I think we know that the communities around us are tightening down on that. And if we don't, we're sitting ducks. And I know that there's some meetings coming up on this. So, I'd really like our enforcement and I know our landlords want to work together with us, and I think we should give them a even bigger chance. So thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for reminding us we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, yesterday at Rotary, Sheriff Gardner was talking about the number of gun permits that have been issued really over the last year and how they've increased substantially. Is it your understanding that the state requires background checks on those people who are issued gun permits?
Yes, they are.
There. And what would be, if we were to take a look at, I'm not against people carrying firearms, but I want to be sure that the people carrying firearms are people that are responsible citizens. Any suggestions that you would have to, kind of help us control this? It seems like that in itself is an issue, and that it's spiraling out of control.
Right. The sheriff takes care of, gun permits, so we're not involved with that so much. And what you see people illegally using a firearm. Just because you have a permit or don't have a permit, these people are bringing firearms to these crimes. So you can't really make a correlation there. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you very much, Chief. Okay, Council, we have several public hearings. Our first one is a public hearing will be held to consider the fiscal year 13 consolidated transit funding application to the Iowa Department of Transportation.
Hello, I'm Brad DeBrouwer, I'm the transit manager. And this, the consolidated transit funding application is our annual application to the DOT for state and federal transit assistance. Our application is due on May 1st. We are applying for operating and capital funds from the DOT and the Federal Transit Administration to continue our current transit programs. The Section 5307 federal operating assistance and state transit assistance programs are formula funds that support the operating costs of the fixed route bus system. The Section 5310 program provides formula funding that helps fund our ADA paired transit contract with Lynn County Lifts. The Section 5316, the Job Access Reverse Commute, and the Section 5317 New Freedom programs are discretionary programs to help fund the after-hours service contracts that we have with the Neighborhood Transportation Service, the NTS, as well as the Coalition to Augment the Bus Service, and that's the CABS program. And the Section 5309 Federal Capital Assistance Program provides discretionary funding to replace buses and minivans that have met their federal replacement thresholds. And the last one we have on the list here is we're requesting discretionary funding from the state's Public Transit Infrastructure Grant Program to help fund the bus garage replacement project. And we received funding from that program again last year as well. So, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Brad. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Amy, do we have any written comments or objections for this or any of the public hearings today?
Your Honor, there were no comments or objections filed in regard to any of today's public hearings.
All right, thank you, Amy. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward to the podium and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council on this issue. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 1. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us to any council comments or questions. Seeing none, Councilman Olson moves adoption of the resolution, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That moves us to public hearing number 2. This is a public hearing will be held to consider a change of zone for property west of Edgewood Road Southwest and south of the Crandick Railroad from A, which is the Agriculture Zone District, to I-2, which is General Industrial Zone District, as requested by the Elmer F. Chetz Testamentary Trust, Sharon K. Hahn, Marilyn Chetz Revocable Trust, Ronnie Chetz Stasko Farms and LLC, and Deborah Boleski and Connie Wildfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad Larson with Community Development. This rezoning request is to zone land from A, agricultural, to I2, general industrial. The parcel consists of approximately 74 acres of farmland is currently being used for farmland. The city has identified this area as commercial/industrial in the 1999 comprehensive plan. There is infrastructure in place to serve the current and future industrial uses in this area. Here you can see the location. Wendling Quarries is here to the north, and also BWC, another industrial company, is located nearby. And this is a zoning map. That's all the information I have at this point, unless there's questions from council.
Thank you, Brad. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 2. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us to any council comments or question. It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Olson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, council. That brings us to public hearing number 3. A public hearing will be held to consider a change of zone for property east of Edgewood Road Southwest, west of 26th Street Southwest, and south of 68th Avenue Southwest from Agriculture Zone District to I-2, which is General Industrial Zone, as requested by Elmer Chetz, Testamentary Trust, Sharon K. Hahn, Marilyn Chetz, Revocable Trust, Ronnie Chetz, Stansko Farms, LLC, Deborah Voleski, and Connie Wildfield. Brad?
Thank you. Again, this is another rezoning from Ag to I-2. It is owned by the same property owners of the previous public hearing. This parcel consists of approximately 78 acres. It, too, is identified as commercial or industrial in the city's future land use map, and its infrastructure is in place for the current and future industrial uses. I would like to point out that there are no plans for develop at this point, as staff understands it, that the rezoning is occurring just to help with the sale of the property. You can see here this was the second public hearing. This is the location for this public hearing. And here's the zoning map. You can see that it is surrounded by industrially zoned land currently. So if there's any questions of staff, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Brad. Council, this is the time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 3. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us any council comments or consideration. It's been moved by Olson, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, council. That brings us to public hearing number 4. This is a public hearing will be held to consider a change of zone for property between 11th Avenue Southeast and 12th Avenue Southeast, north of 3rd Street Southeast, from I-2, which is General Industrial Zone District, to C3, which is Regional Commercial Zone District, as requested by the Cedar Rapids City Market, Inc. and the City of Cedar Rapids. Brad, you're in order.
Thank you, Mayor. As you may remember, the City Council approved a lease to purchase for the Nubo City Market in July of 2011. This rezoning is just to help move the project forward. Before the city entered into the lease to purchase agreement with Nubo City Market, the city completed a Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental assessment using EPA grants. No remediation was required by IDNR at that time. As part of the flood demolition program, the buildings along 3rd Street were demolished. There was discussions at one point to help try to save the day building, but it was deemed structurally unstable or deficient, and so that too had to come down. The preliminary site plan was reviewed for the recently adopted Czech Bohemia Overlay District, and it is found to be compliant with those standards recently adopted. However, the sign, there were concerns about the sign, but the sign will be reviewed by the Technical Advisory Committee when building permits are applied for it. What we have found is that signs change quite a bit from a preliminary site plan to the time that they're actually requested for building permits. We would consider this as an infill development in flood-impacted neighborhood. The preliminary site development plan consists of rehabbing the 18,000 square foot warehouse that is in place now. There would be 22,000 square feet of new green space. The site right now is 100% hard surfaced. The site will provide for public spaces, helping to invigorate the 3rd Street environment there. There will be pervious paving and rainwater storage tanks used on the site to help manage stormwater runoff as well. This is just a location map of the Nubo City Market, which I'm sure you're aware of. This is a aerial. These were the buildings that had to be taken down because of their state after the flood. This is where the 18,000 square foot warehouse is, which they'll be converted for the Nubo City Market Hall. This is the zoning map. You can see that it is zoned C3 in the front. And because of its previous use as the Quality Chef food site, it is zoned industrial in the back, and that's the parcel that's changing. This is a overhead view of the site plan. You can see this is where the 18,000 square foot warehouse that will be converted to the new Bow City Market Hall. The public spaces are here at on the southern side. This is a play area. This is just more green space. The accesses will be provided off of 11th and 12th Avenue. Vehicular access won't be off of 3rd Street. However, there will be a pedestrian access allowed off or provided here off of 3rd Street. The area you can see here hatched is proposed to be pervious paving. They're also proposing to allow neighborhood uses to allow neighborhood uses parking here on site when they're not having the city market on the weekends. These are aerials of the proposed New Bow City Market. We believe they have done a pretty good job of rehabbing this once basically pre-engineered pole-built metal building, metal warehouse. They're adding windows and they're embellishing on the entryways. They're also, of course, adding the signage, and they're also adding the storage tanks here for stormwater runoff. So that's all the information I have, unless there's questions from City Council.
Thank you, Brad. This is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter, Council. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the Council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 4. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us any council comments or considerations. Councilman Swore.
Thank you, Your Honor. We didn't get to see inside the warehouse area. Is there going to be, not that I'm really concerned about it, but will there be eating stations where you can sit down and eat? I mean, it says come to shop and prepare to linger. Well, while my wife's shopping, I'm going to have a hot dog. Is it going to be set up so that there'll be some?
I apologize.
Won't be any
I don't
hot
have
dogs
that.
served there.
Well, organic. It'd be an organic dog.
We don't have that information. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Swore. Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recuse myself.
Okay, it's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Olson. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries 8-0. Thank you, Council. That moves us to public hearing number 5. This will be held, a public hearing will be held to consider adoption of the fiscal year 12 annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program and Home Investment Partnership Program. Paula?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Paula Mitchell, Community Development. As you're aware, Cedar Rapids is an entitlement community for the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership programs, which means that the city qualifies based on population and age of housing stock and some other characteristics to receive funding annually from HUD to carry out various community development and revitalization activities and provide affordable housing in the community. The process that we use to allocate those funds involves use of a Grants and Programs Citizens Advisory Committee that meets during the periods of January and February, generally to review applications received for funding and make recommendations to the City Council. This year for FY12, we estimate that the city will receive about $1,091,099 in CDBG funding, and through the Home Investment Partnership, $361,571. I would just point out this is a substantial decrease over the last 2 years. I believe in FY10, the city received about $1.4 million, and in home funding received about $560,000. The decrease is related to the congressional appropriations. The programs have been kind of a casualty of the federal budget discussions. So the preliminary allocations, that have been recommended by the Grants and Programs Committee for the Home Program are shown on this slide, and that includes funding for the city's first-time homebuyer program and associated administrative costs, as well as funding to 2 affordable housing agencies that propose to carry out rehab in the core neighborhoods. So the totals are shown there. Then there are several categories of CDBG funding that the program is broken into. The first is administration, and these are the city's costs for administering the program, contract compliance, and monitoring of subrecipients, as well as carrying out the programs that the city administers. In addition to that, the city has also requested that some funding be allocated for some neighborhood planning activities, and these would target neighborhoods that don't have an existing plan or were not included in the neighborhood planning process. The next category is the CDBG Public Services budget, and this category is limited to 15% of the total allocation received, and so it's always very competitive and oversubscribed. So this is a challenging category for the Citizen Committee to make decisions. But the agencies that are funded will all be carrying out activities that meet the CDBG national objective of serving low and moderate income citizens in the community through a variety of activities. They include youth and senior services, transitional housing, and case management services. And then lastly, we have the CDBG facilities budget, which is physical improvements to properties, either housing stock in the city of Cedar Rapids or specific facility improvements that will have an impact in the neighborhoods. So this year, those activities being proposed for funding are aging services, chore services, which is services to allow elderly citizens to age in place in their homes, the city's owner-occupied rehab programs, and then the Henry Davidson Youth Center facility improvements. That's to relocate their flood-impacted facility that provides services to the neighborhood. So the purpose of this public hearing is to consider the proposed activities with their respective budget allocations. If City Council is comfortable moving forward, the next action on this item would be May 8th, at which point we would have a resolution adopting our annual action plan for City Council's consideration, and that would be in order to submit the action plan to HUD, which is due May 15th. Those are all the items that I have at this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council on this issue. Seeing none, that closes out the public comments section of public hearing number 5. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. We don't have a resolution this evening, Council, but is there any comments or questions of Paula? Monica?
I was just going to say, I know that's tough to allocate that, and just thinking through all of our needs in this community, I would give you some kudos for how you did that. Nice job.
Thank you, Monica. Councilman Chuck Swore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Are these funds all audited? Are we accountable for where we spend them, and somebody follows up and makes sure that they're being used properly?
Yes, that is correct. They're subject to the city's overall audit requirements. They're subject to, because of the volume of funding that the city receives, the OMB audit process, and then approximately every 3 years, HUD comes to monitor our compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Don, sorry.
I served with you on that committee before I came into council, and I do know what we go through and how we look at it and all the things. The citizens take that very seriously. I want to thank you for the work you keep doing on that, and we'll keep moving forward. And I move that we make a move on this.
Well, we'll do that at the May 8th council meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. But I will recognize you on May 8th for that resolution. Thank you, Council. That moves us to public hearing number 6. The public hearing will be held to consider an underground electric line easement agreement with Interstate Power and Light and Iowa Corporation for property located on city-owned land southeasternly of 9th Avenue Southeast and the Cedar Rapids and Iowa City Crandick Railroad tracks from the Cedar River to 2nd Street Southeast in connection with improvements to the electrical service to Penford Products for the new River Run substation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sandy Pumphrey with the Public Works Department. I would draw Council's attention to a corrected version of the plat that was placed by your chairs this evening that is very slightly different to the one in the Council packet. This would be providing an easement to Alliant over the park and ride lot. We are told that no disruption to the parking lot will occur during construction based on the method that they will use for the utility. No conflict with the trail or future flood system alignment is anticipated. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sandy. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 6. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us any council comments or considerations. It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, council. Public hearing number 7 has been canceled, so that moves us to public hearing number 8. A public hearing will be held to consider the disposition of property at 927 3rd Street Southwest and 1014 2nd Street Southwest, and to convey the same to Lynn County.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Adam Lindelof, Community Development Department. I'll go over this map. Towards the center is the Lynn County Public Service Center. Their existing parking lot adjacent to that. Across 2nd Street Southwest is another existing parking lot. Thank you. And then the 2 properties, 927 3rd Street Southwest and 1014 2nd Street Southwest, that are part of this public hearing. The county owns this parcel right here, and then there's a parcel, a gravel parking lot that's owned by Penford. And the county made this request to meet its parking requirement with expanding the former admin building. They needed more parking. They like to increase the existing one over here, and as part of that, they're making a request to acquire the parcels. And this discussion with the county really came about from an earlier discussion about the city's future flood management system and acquiring some county property that would allow the city to put that flood management system there and also make a connection from the amphitheater to Festival Park over by the police station. This did go to the Flood Recovery Committee and was recommended by them at their March 23rd meeting. And staff does recommend disposing of the properties, and I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Council, this is the time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 8. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us any council comments or considerations. Councilman Olson?
Are these city-owned properties?
They are, and I apologize, I failed to mention that these properties were acquired by the city through the voluntary acquisition program.
And what we're doing is we're passing them on to them for their use, and there's no dollar transfer, correct?
The county will be acquiring them for the fair market value, which is approximately $5,000 per parcel.
Okay, so there is a dollar amount attached to that.
Yes, and that's because of the federal interest that is part of acquiring those funds with the CDBG funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Monica?
Adam, I'm just looking at this one that's right in the middle of a residential block. I've walked that. I'm trying to remember how intact that block is. This aerial shows it to be fair. People are coming back. I'm just thinking about what would the county be required to do? How will they buffer that?
The mouse here.
That one, yeah.
These parcels right in here have already been acquired by the city as part of the voluntary acquisition program. The county's intent is to perform a land exchange with Penford. So this property, this parcel that's a gravel parking lot, would be conveyed to Penford. There'd be a land exchange with Penford for the future for this for 1014, they would exchange the properties, and then the county would pave the gravel parking lot that was Penford's, and that would be part of their overall parking system there.
And then, I guess I wasn't following that. So then Penford owns this other one over the 1014. It's a swap.
Correct. The county would trade that land with Penford.
And then do we have a master plan for what will happen along that block where the 1014 is?
Other than what the neighborhood planning process would show.
Okay. All right.
Adam, I think right next to that is that
Councilman
church.
Olson, do you-
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mayor. Is that the church next to that lot, I think, isn't it? So that could be used by the church as parking as well, or?
Yes, the back of that lot borders 1014.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, council? It's been moved by Olson, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, council. That brings us to public hearing number 9. This is a public hearing will be held to consider the disposition of excess city-owned residential property at 404 G Avenue Northwest, 405 G Avenue Northwest, and 437 G Avenue Northwest acquired to the Voluntary Property Acquisition Program. Paula?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. This item is, as the Mayor said, a public hearing to consider disposition of property that was acquired through the CDBG Voluntary Acquisition Program. And the properties in question this evening are 404 G Avenue Northwest, 405 G Avenue Northwest, and 437 G Avenue Northwest. These are properties that were submitted as part of a master development plan that was provided by Matthew 25. For an Ellis urban village concept. And that was a master plan development concept that combined housing, urban agricultural uses, and potentially some neighborhood commercial. To just review the background on this item, the development committee reviewed the master concept on May 23rd and July 25th of 2011 and recommended that move forward to the full city council. Then a public hearing was held on August 23rd of 2011, followed by an informational session for developers. One proposal was received from Matthew 25, and the City Council did identify Matthew 25 as a preferred developer in October 11th, 2011, and authorized a development agreement on December 6th. So at that time, there were approximately 13 properties that the city did not yet own that were part of that concept. The action tonight is to consider the disposition of properties that were part of the proposal but were not yet owned by the city. So what was brought forward at that time was only property that was under city control, if that makes sense. Just a refresher on the disposition requirements. I believe this was touched on in the last presentation as well, but the authority for the property disposition is found in the CDBG regulations and Iowa Code. It does call for a competitive disposition process, which was conducted. And if the land is disposed of for less than the fair market value, then it needs to meet a CDBG national objective. The national objective being met here is the low and moderate income benefit through the services being provided to the neighborhood. The CDBG use restrictions are secured through a restrictive land use covenant, and that's for a minimum of 12 years. The map on this slide shows the parcels in blue are the city-owned parcels that are already part of this development agreement that's been executed with Matthew 25. And then the orange parcels showed on the slide are those that are being considered for disposition tonight. They do adjoin the parcels that are part of that development agreement. Two of them, I would note, are located in the 100-year floodplain. And those are the parcels to the right of the redevelopment area. And then the next couple of slides are just renderings that have been provided as part of the master concept plan. So this shows the master redevelopment plan concept for the 4-block area that's part of the development agreement. And then the next slide is a rendering that's been provided by the developer to show some of the concept planning. So the item that's under consideration tonight is the continuation of the disposition of these parcels, and that's the resolution that's before you tonight. Following that, if City Council is comfortable moving forward, then there would be an opportunity to consider an amendment to the development agreement with Matthew 25 to incorporate these parcels. And that's all the information I have at this time, but would be happy to try to answer questions.
Thank you, Paula. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward to the podium and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 9. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us to any council comments or considerations. Councilman Shields.
Caleb, could you back up to the picture that I think you were showing? They did that one. One before that. Yeah. What does this represent, the middle picture on the left-hand side? What does that represent? You know?
Would that be this one?
No, the middle one up above.
This one.
There, yes.
This, if I'm not mistaken, is a concept for a children's play area and a type of interpretive center that would be provided for kind of children's learning and play, hands-on experience of the agricultural activities.
So I just ask that to have folks realize that this is going to be more than just planting a garden. It's going to be a lot of other activities that can help our youngsters. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thank you, Justin. Councilman Julich. Chris?
Were these properties not owned by the city when we put the development agreement originally? Is that the reason why we...
That's exactly right, and we had forecast at that time that there were still parcels that were being that were moving through the acquisition program, and so we would bring those back when the city owned them.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councilwoman Poe, Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. Paula, do you know if Matthew 25 has been working with any other partners in that time check area?
I believe that for these concept plans specifically, they've been working with the Iowa State University Design Studio students. And then in addition, I believe they've been working with some of the neighborhood partners, the neighborhood organization, and just around general planning for that neighborhood.
So Northwest Neighborhood Association is familiar with these plans and have been involved in the process?
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Councilman Carr, Don?
I talked to the Neighborhood Association today. They're not involved in the plans. They're not getting communicated with. So I think we need to push that a little farther forward. The Northwest Side people that live in that community aren't being involved in this as they should be. To answer that question for you, because you weren't sure. And when we put these lots up for people to use, and I've got several people have contacted me about the possibility of doing this also. Have we advertised this or made it so other people who might be interested in doing this besides Matthew 25 have the opportunity? Because I got a call from Iowa State University from a young girl up there who is an Afghan vet that wants to do some gardening stuff like this to go through vet systems and give the food away. I've been contacted by Troop 2, which is a special needs troop in Cedar Rapids, who wants to, for an Eagle Scout project, and Troop 2 is a special needs troop, to get some land down there, and they've tried to contact Matthew 25, and they're not getting, some of these people aren't getting any help. They're not getting any communication. They're getting kind of the door shut on them. And I also know another person who lived down there on G one of the lots next to him, and he wasn't notified. So I'm thinking we're doing something wrong here, that these people don't know what's going on, who would also like an opportunity to get some of these lots down there to put gardens on, to give the food away, not to sell it for profit. Matthew 25 is going to get volunteer help, plant the food, everything's free for them, and then they're going to sell it for $400 shares. These people want to come in and grow the food and give it to veteran centers to feed the vets, and the Boy Scout troop wants to give it away to feed the poor. How do we reach these people, or can we give them some lots? Can we give them these 3 lots? I guess I want to look at this a little stronger because I have a trouble with a nonprofit taking city taxpayers' land to make a profit.
Well, certainly the decision to dispose of city-owned property is always a policy discussion for the city council. I can talk a little bit about the outreach that was done related to this project, and we certainly always try to cast as broad a net as possible to reach out to the community. So in this particular instance, a public notice was published in the newspaper, as well as the public hearing that was held on August 23rd. In addition to that, we issued a press release and held an informational meeting for developers. Typically, when we call for redevelopment proposals, we would also notify the Home Builders Association and try to get the word out that way, and they've been good partners in terms of promoting those redevelopment opportunities. In general, we encourage people who are interested in redevelopment to register their interest through the city website. That's a pretty recent development in our disposition process, but there is now an interactive website that allows citizens to go and look at the status of city-owned properties, and there's a mechanism for them to register interest so that if there are opportunities for redevelopment, we would have a record of that.
All right, well, and these folks know about it because they did some work down there with Affordable Housing Network and the development. The people from Iowa State University, the Troop 2, and the Northwest Side Neighborhood Association and other people who are interested in this land down here don't go through, they're not developers. We've got to find another method to communicate or reach these people to give them these opportunities, or we need to have in our development agreement with Matthew 25 that if they get this land, that they need to work with other groups like Iowa State University Agriculture Department, who called me, and Troop 2, Special Needs Troop, and Northwest Side. Otherwise, what I'm saying, I'm not getting information back where they're good stewards or good communicators or good partners. And I'm really worried about this. And maybe it's because they're more interested in making a profit off this taxpayer land than they are serving the public with free food or helping the public get this food for free because it's all free to them. So I have a little problem with this, and I won't vote for this under these circumstances. I think we need to look at this a little better. We already gave them 11 lots. I want to see them prove themselves. We can't just keep giving them lots. I don't want to give them 25 lots. We've got to see some performance. This is property owned by the citizens of this community, and if the citizens of this community can't get at this property because of them, I have a problem with it.
And we agree that performance is a key element of this. And so the development agreement that's currently been executed calls for a 3-year lease agreement with an option to purchase. And the purchase would be contingent on that successful performance. So they will be providing reports to the city as well as going through that agricultural permitting process. So we'll review that annually.
And I know we've got that about the purchase of it, which I don't agree with either, unless they pay full market retail value for it. But I'm still concerned about these other groups who want some land that we have down there that could grow food and give it to the poor for free, on homeless vets for free. So somehow we've got to get this information out better, or I can have them contact you to see if we can put some more lots together for Troop 2, Special Needs Troop. And now, you know how exciting this is? We have a Special Needs Troop in Cedar Rapids, and we have a young special needs young man who wants to earn his Eagle Scout by growing free food to give away to the poor. I mean, how exciting is this for special needs troops? So I want to work on this a little harder. And then I also think we need to work on the communication between the Northwest Side residents and this group. We need better communication. Recently there was some stuff around the Northwest Side neighborhood that said their name but it didn't have their logo. It was the wrong logo. We've got to have more communication down there. This neighborhood belongs to the people down there, not a nonprofit. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Don. I'll recognize Councilman Olson, followed by Councilman Swore.
Well, I think I disagree with Councilman Carr because I've been attending those public meetings. There's been neighbors there. There's been the neighborhood association. There's been Iowa State. There's been people there. The only reason that people aren't going to the meetings, I've talked to several people. I said, do you know about the meetings? They said, yes. Did you go to the meetings? No. I was there. You were there. I think the way you've couched this is totally wrong. I think it's unfair to the people that have been working. You know, I've had the president of Iowa State University there who took this on, who is very excited about what the students are doing here and has made that a feature of the College of Design. Iowa State, Matthew 25, other groups, there's people there. Don, I think your characterization of this issue is unfair to Matthew 25. It's unfair to the people that have been attending the meetings. I take it personally because I think you've stated some things that are not correct. And I think that there are opportunities for people to get land. The problem is a lot of groups that say, oh, I see what's happening here. I see these fine renderings. Boy, if I didn't know it was going to look this good, I want one. Then they need to come to the process. We need to get that troop lined up with the city staff, and they need to come in and prove, just like Matthew 25 and other organizations have proved, that they got a plan. I'd like to have free land too, but I don't have a plan down there. And so I think that what we need to do is you're exactly right, we need to continue to expand the core group. We need to expand who gets involved. I've met with several of the cave people down there, and that's not a fair word to use, but most of us couch it that way, and trying to encourage them to get involved in the effort so that we get more things done. And I think that's the type of attitude we need to have. We need to help line up that troop. And other people that have an idea, have them come in and have our staff work with them, as Matthew 25 has done and the Northwest Neighborhood Association has done, and participate in the process. And so, are there other groups out there that probably want free land? Sure. Have they provided us a plan and a concept? No. So have them come forward, present the plan, and I'll support those groups getting lots as well, because we're going to have more lots down there for development. But please, please do not, and there's inferences that come out of this, and I don't want to be negative, but the statements that were made and were on camera were not fair. And I just wanted to state that, and I don't appreciate those comments.
Well, I don't
because they aren't fair to the neighborhood.
Either, Scott, because I'm correct in what I said.
First of all, Don, I'll recognize you again a second time. Councilman Olson has the floor right now.
And again, I just want to make sure that the public understands that there is groups. Has everything been done correctly? Probably not. Are we not doing a very good job of communicating sometimes? Probably not. But I don't think we should take it out on a group that is trying to do something right or wrong for the neighborhood, and I think they are working with other groups. Personal opinion from all of the meetings that I have attended in that area. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Swore, Chuck?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just share that I've attended, I think, all of those sessions also, and I've seen many of the neighborhood folks. I've seen several of the people who concerns were expressed about. But number one, I also visited with the executive director of the Boy Scouts, and we talked about Troop 2, and I directed them. And to the best of my knowledge, they have contacted Matthew 25. And Matthew 25, I can't imagine that there isn't room for them to be able to assist, certainly in seeing to it that the young man that wants to get his Eagle Scout by planting food and growing it and giving it away will have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Chuck. Councilman Julich, then followed by Councilman Carr.
As it relates to control of the property, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we put that as a lease opportunity. So I think you addressed that. One thing that and this isn't just unique to this property or flood property that we've gotten, but we have a process that we use for disposition of any city property that we've been using for however long the laws have been in place to do disposition. There are rules. The state says we have to publicize this, and we do. We can certainly try to get more people into the loop to try to figure out how to be able to know what the process is, because the issue is most of the organizations and individuals don't have a clue as to what the process is, because it's not something that they do very often or have ever done, probably. Had they ever done it, they'd know the process. And you can't, I mean, no matter what we do, we'll never reach everybody that we need to reach. Just isn't going to happen. That's why the state says, here are the rules you got to abide by, and so you do those rules, and that's what you do. But one thing that I think would be of interest, or at least something to think about, in particular with lots that the city has owned and has bought in some of the areas, you know, we do it for rezoning. When something's going to get rezoned, we put a notice out, you know, both in the newspaper, but we also put a stake in the ground at that location saying it's going to be zoned. Maybe we put a stake in the ground on a lot that's going to come up for a public hearing some point to dispose of it. You know, that's another way of trying to reach out to more people that might be in those areas, that because it's a little different with some of these properties than it is with some of the other dispositions we do. But just a thought is something that we could do, be relatively easy to do that, you know, and it provides some additional information for neighbors, because really word of mouth spreads a lot of it many times, and so putting something out there like that would allow you know, that communication to spread a little bit easier. So just a thought.
Yeah, very good point, Chris. Please look into that, Jeff and Paula. Recognize Councilman Carr for a second time also.
Scott, I think you have a misunderstanding, because I've been on the council longer than you have, and those people in the Northwest Side neighborhood that you represent, I also represent at large. They know me well. They communicate with me different than they communicate with you, because they don't know you. And I think you need to go back in your district and communicate with your district people a lot better than you do, and maybe you'll know what I know. And I think maybe you just better go back and talk to your folks so you know what's going on. But on top of, and they've communicated me with this, and they had me go to that meeting with you because they were concerned about having representation down there that served the needs of that neighborhood, and they trust me, and I work hard for them, and I don't mind. Okay, so there's no misrepresented facts here. These are facts that I know about. I don't misrepresent facts, and I don't appreciate you making that statement. That was obnoxious. And I'm going to tell you right now that I'm concerned about how we get this property belongs to the citizens of this community. And I represent the citizens community, and it's important that we do it the right way, and it's important we give all the citizens of the community the opportunity. And what I mentioned before, we're not doing a very good job of communicating that. And I think we need to, and I think if we get into this position, we need to do better. When I went to that meeting, if you remember right, I'm the one that said, wait a minute, we need to get this neighborhood association and this Matthew 25 together in the same room, because they're not. Since then, they've gotten the room better, and they've been going to the meetings. I put that together and forced it to happen, because we have a problem down there, because the neighborhood people who live down there don't appreciate somebody else down there in their neighborhood telling them how to run their neighborhood. So we've got two groups of people trying to run the same neighborhood. So that's not miscommunication of facts. That's just a fact. And one is there for a profit, and other people are there just to live and enjoy their homes in their neighborhood. So we have to be careful what we do as a council when we do this work down there and provide this service down there for these people, how we do this. And I'm going to keep pushing this subject, that we get everybody on the same page and everybody on board and get this done properly. And I also think it's important now, the Iowa State people, that was the agriculture department, not your architectural department. This is a complete different department of Iowa State that contacted me. I'll be glad. In fact, I sent you an email to have her talk to you to help with Matthew 25. Did I not do that? So that's where we're at, and that's what I'm trying to do. So as far as your statement, it was a little obnoxious. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. The motion's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Council passes at 8-1, the one no vote being a Carr. Thank you, Council. That brings us to public hearing number 10. Will be held to consider the proposed plan specification, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Cedar Rapids Convention Complex parking ramp and Skywalk project. Parking ramp estimated cost is $10.5 million. Skywalk estimated cost is $1 million. Sandy?
Mayor and council members, Sandy Pumphrey with the Public Works Department once again. The estimated costs on this particular project have been broken into two. $10.5 million is assigned to the ramp itself, and then $1 million for the skywalk. The purpose of the development is to serve the public in addition to the hotel and the convention center. The ramp as it stands right now has 460 spaces within it. However, we are also asking bidders to provide prices for 4 alternates to include the facade or an additional section of facade in addition to what you can see in the rendering here right now, to provide a 7th level, to provide additional retail in addition to the corner area right here, and finally just an elevator speed upgrade. Construction is slated to begin this July, and the completion is to coincide with the hotel opening in 2013.
Thank you, Sandy. Council, this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to come forward and address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward, state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Council. Patrick DePalma, Cedar Rapids resident. I just want to urge you that whatever plan you follow here, you add retail to the first floor. I think it'd be a big mistake not to do that. Previous plan I saw had 20,000 square feet of retail space on the first floor for restaurants. Having restaurant and retail space there will be invaluable. Having across the street from the hotel and the convention center, you're going to have a lot of people, especially in winter, when they don't have to go outside. They'll go through the skywalk, they'll go down, they'll have dinner, they'll get drinks, they'll go back to the convention center. The retail space will pay for itself. The rents you generate from there will pay for itself. People will go there before an event at the arena. They'll go there before Theater Cedar Rapids. They'll go there afterwards for drinks. I don't think there's any chance at all that it won't be a success, and it will generate additional revenue for the city. The offset would be adding another level of parking. I don't have the numbers. The preliminary numbers show that there'd be a marginal cost, a small marginal cost to add a level of parking to offset the first floor. And I think you'll find it's worth spending the money on the additional parking in order to get the retail space. So that's what I would urge you to do. Appreciate the time and nice shirts.
Thank you, Patrick. Would anyone else from the audience like to address the council on this matter? Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 10. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us any council comments or considerations. Councilman Chuck Swore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sandy, the alternates are, I attended the pre-bid. Are the alternates going to be open for us to select as we want, or are they somehow tiered?
At this time, the bid is set up such that the low bid will be selected based on the 2 base bids,
right?
And then alternates selected after that. We are heavily looking into a way to see if there is a more flexible way that the city can choose alternates right now, with obviously staying within legal parameters.
Yeah. What would the and maybe Jim has to answer this, but why would it be out of line for us to be able to pick and choose?
Council member Swore. It's possible. We'd have to look at the project totally in terms of what the base and what the alternates were. The key is that at the end of the day, the specifications, the project that the council is seeking bids on, are the same for all prospective bidders. And so my concern would be that, and not that this would ever happen, but the concern would be that if the process were such that it didn't give each prospective bidder the same shot that all the other prospective bidders got. For instance, again, not knowing what the details are here, I can't tell you, but I think that's the kind of the context that we would look at those sorts of issues in.
And Sandy, I guess I would just urge that we certainly investigate how we can best control that in the best interest of the city. I appreciate contractors' concerns, but on the other hand, they're the alternates that we want to select or have the opportunity to choose between, as Patrick pointed out, are they're very impactful alternates, and I would not want us to have to do something first before we could do something else. That's what it amounts to. Thank you.
We'll address that.
Thank you, Count.
I did want to add, Mr. Mayor, that my understanding is that while not all the retail was part of the base bid, even if we don't accept an alternate in the future, the retail can be added. I mean, the space is there. So no matter what happens, even if the alternate is not selected, a retailer could come to the city and work with the city in the finishing of that area, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Councilman Swore. Next, Councilwoman Vernon Monica, and then followed by Councilman Julik.
Sandy, what Patrick came up and talked about, do we have that included in the alternates?
So the base bid includes the corner unit right here to the, I guess it would be the north of the stair tower here. And then the alternate is to add what you see along First Avenue right here. So if that alternate is not selected at this point, there will be a void there, which has also been designed so that it doesn't look bad. But it would be to add those 4 bays of extra retail.
So if we don't add those, what's in there?
It would be a recessed facade along the front.
So
or parking.
It's empty.
Would it'd be empty? So
is it parking or is it empty?
It's
dead
more
space?
parking spots.
It's actually
a combination.
Both, right?
So, is there? I just don't get how there's additional cost if retailers. We're worried that we wouldn't be able to fill that because a retailer would have to get that ready and start paying us rent. I mean, maybe that's if you've got them included, we can argue about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Councilman Julik, Chris.
Well, I've been working on this for a long time since you guys drafted me to be the ones to work on the design team for this facility. And at one of our last meetings, I think we discussed the prioritization of the alternates, because part of it has to come down to is what we can afford and what the financials make sense. And I recall, and it's been a couple weeks, I think the retail was one of the things that we moved towards the top, if not the top of the list, to the top of the list in terms of a priority for the reasons that Patrick mentions. And I think that the stakeholders group that was involved in this downtown felt that was the case too. And I'm glad we have the alternates in there, because I think when it comes down to the numbers, when we see the financial information, that's an issue. What Councilman Swore is bringing up is how do you pick which ones? But geez, we want to pick the ones that we, if it's $1.5 million extra for the retail space, or $500,000 more for 200 more spots. I mean, we want to be able to try to make that decision. Well, I'm just throwing out numbers, that's irrelevant, but trying to figure out which is the best one for the price that we're going to pay for those alternates is what I think the stakeholders group I know was figuring was the kind of the plan. So hopefully we have the ability to do something like that. But I do recall that the prioritization if included, I think there were 4 of them, and we prioritized them, and I think the retail was at the top of the list, knowing that has other benefits besides just the dollar amounts associated with the project. So hopefully the design came up with something that didn't look exactly like a parking ramp that I would have designed. But we've got a budget to work within. So, and I think the stakeholder group is satisfied with where we came down, at least at this point, with all the options and the alternates that are presented.
All right, thank you, Chris. Councilman Olson, Scott?
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think with Chuck, I see no reason why we can't look at participating in that prioritization, because I think we need to remind ourselves that, the purpose of this is we're trying to create parking, which generates the majority of the revenue, and so we want to maximize what parking we can afford first, and then we have an appearance issue, and then we have a retail issue. And I think there needs to be an initial retail component to see the demand there. I think we need to be a little careful that we overbuild retail when we have vacant first floor spaces, and all of a sudden we have property owners downtown stating, okay, City of Cedar Rapids, you're now in the retail business. And we're not in the retail business, in my mind. I don't think we are. However, I think it's important, as we saw, if you look at parking ramps in Iowa City, retail and office has been pretty successful around the basis of parking ramps. And I think we want to change how parking ramps are viewed in our community. However, I just think there's a fine line, and I think Chuck's right on about looking at that, just to make sure that we have a retail component. Let's find out if there's a demand. And the good news is, the way they've done the design, we can add as much retail across the front as we think is there in demand. And I just think we need to be careful that, like I say, we do not have the issue of being in the retail development business, which is, I don't think the city should be in.
Thank you. Do you move adoption of the resolution, Scott?
I certainly do.
And moved by Olson, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That brings us to our 11th and final public hearing of the afternoon. A public hearing will be held to consider the specification, form of contract, and estimated cost for the environmental remediation services for flood damaged structures. John?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This is public hearing is for continued efforts for environmental remediation on our flood damaged residential structures prior to demolition. The bid packet has been out. Pre-bid was last week, and we're scheduled for bid opening tomorrow morning. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, John. Council, this is the time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on this matter? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 11. Council, let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter and there were 0 objections. That brings us to any council comments or considerations. Councilman Carr, Don?
Do me a favor on these. When I was down on Els Boulevard, I kind of laughed, and I want to kind of the house next to Larry Kinnon's barbershop, when they were doing some work in there, getting asbestos out of there. The guys in the house out the windows were all dressed in uniforms, and they threw the asbestos out the window on the ground to a guy that wasn't. Give you a heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Any other council comments or considerations? The resolution's been moved by Olson, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That closes out our public hearing section of our meeting. We have 2 public comment sections. The first public comment section is for residents that want to come forward and speak on agenda items that we have before us, Council. And then we have a second public comment section that comes at the end of the agenda for people to talk about issues that are germane to the city of Cedar Rapids, but may not be on the agenda this particular day. So we have 2 speakers that have signed up. First, I'll recognize Dr. Wagdy, who will speak on item number 34, followed by John Wauer.
Good afternoon. My name is Hisham. I'm here on behalf of CPC Properties LC, which owns the property on 1002 4th Avenue Southeast. I have a handout for everybody here to look at. The first page shows the property aerial, and it's on 10th Street between 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue. The city approached us to acquire part of our property, as in second page, is about 5,000 square feet. The current number of parking spaces in our property at this time is 86, which is about 4.5 spaces per 1,000 square foot. And as you see here from the city representative Cook appraisal, the paragraph in the box stated that we will be left with 77 spaces. This is the city document, not mine. And the next page, also from the city, stating the exact number of square feet we have, which is discrepancy with the representative of the city. The representative of the city did not take in account the number of square feet we have in the basement, which is finished and utilized. So the total number of square feet we have is over 19,000, exactly 19,086. If you go to the next page regarding the parking spaces, the current parking spaces, 86, that barely covers the code of 4.5. The code used to be 7, and even at 7, we had problems. Patients have problems finding parking spots. But 4.5, we'll have a problem, but we will be at code. The parking spaces will lose, as per the document from the city representative is 16. So we will be left with 70 parking spaces, but because of redesign, they can bring it up to 77. I don't know if they will decrease the slots for the car or not, but the bottom line is at 77 will be under code with a 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square foot. I've been in negotiation with the city representative for a long time, and we are at the point now that we are not agreeing about the solution for this problem, and we had a final offer that will be agreed upon today by the council. And what we really need is not monetary compensation for our parking space. We need parking space. And I gave them the solution to swap parking space for parking space. We have an adjacent property the city can acquire and give us 1 foot for 1 foot. They take 5,000 square feet from us, give us 5,000 square feet. That's all I'm asking for. And I went out of my way and I got all the information needed to acquire this property, which is next page, dated January 9th, 2012. So I'm asking the council to reopen this matter and consider my request, or to at least table it this time and discuss it later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Next, John Lauer.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I am representing Lynn County Trails Association, and I'm addressing consent agenda item 40Q. Lynn County Trails Association is working to develop a significant recreational trail and an important bicycle commuting route to Rockwell Collins. Blair's Ferry Road from C Avenue northeast to Lindale Drive is a narrow 4-lane, busy thoroughfare and is not safe bicycle commuting route. There are currently no bicycle connections between the 2 largest cities in the metropolitan area, Marion and Cedar Rapids. This project supports the Blue Zones Initiative objective of promoting healthy lifestyle by making it feasible for many employees to commute to Rockwell Collins and other nearby businesses by bicycle and walking. Non-motorized commuting supports the Cedar Rapids iGreen program, since it is environmentally sound to reduce automobile traffic. LCTA has purchased an abandoned railroad right-of-way within the city of Cedar Rapids city limits in order to extend the Lindale Trail east from C Avenue and Blair's Ferry Road northeast intersection to the Marion city limits. LCTA is donating the property, which is 6.37 acres and approximately 2,000 feet of trail, to the city of Cedar Rapids. Access to the trail from C Avenue is via an existing easement through IBEW property. Entry from C Avenue is in front of the Walgreens drugstore or from Blair's Ferry Road east of the Road Ranger convenience store. Cedar Rapids Comprehensive Trails Plan will eventually connect to the Cedar River Trail, will connect it to the Cedar River Trail from the west, and Marion Trails Plan will eventually connect it to the Grant Wood Trail from the east. So there will be a significant trail length eventually. LCTA has been working with the city's staff and, excuse me, LCTA has been working with the cities of Cedar Rapids and Marion to develop the donated property at minimum cost by using city staff and equipment. LCTA has recently completed a cleanup project for the property. It took the solid agency trucks, three trucks to haul away all the accumulated trash and from the abandoned railroad. LCTA and the Cedar Rapids staff are co-chairs of the Blue Zones Walkability Bikeability Initiative. Lindale Trail Project is an example of what can be accomplished when we bring the communities together in cooperative effort to make Cedar Rapids and the entire metro area a healthy community. I want to thank you for your support on this and for future trail projects. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Council. That closes out the first public comment section. That moves us to, before I take a motion to approve the agenda, Jeff, do you have any changes in the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Council, is there any changes in the agenda? Monica?
I'd like to remove number 34 from the consent agenda, please.
Okay, number 34 removed from the consent and placed on the regular. Any other, Monica? Ann?
Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself on item 39 and 40I.
Okay, Councilwoman Poe would like to recuse herself on item number 39 and 40I. Councilman
Did you say me? Okay,
yeah,
sorry. I need to recuse myself on 40NN, 40UU, 40SS, and 36 due to client relationships. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Julich, just to review, item number 40NN, 40QQ, 40SUU, and item number 36. Okay, Amy, do you have that? And Councilman Swore?
Thank you. I need to recuse myself on 40JK and PPQQ.
Okay, Councilman Swore recuses himself on item number 40J and K and item PP and QQ under item number 40. Do you have that, Amy? Finally, Councilman Olson.
Yes. I think I probably should recuse myself on item 34 since there's some literature in there, and I'll explain that when we get to discussion.
All right, Councilman Olson wants to recuse himself from item number 34. Okay, thank you, Council. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? It's been moved by Carr, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. That moves us to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That brings us to our regular agenda. We have 5 items are our regular agenda, Council, but we've moved item number 34 off the regular agenda from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, so we'll take that up first. Monica, you asked to have that removed from the consent agenda?
Well, a couple of items. I know that you were, I think, out, Mr. Mayor, and I chaired a meeting where we talked about the widening of 10th Street between First Avenue and what I thought was 3rd Avenue. I'm almost positive that our long discussion was whether to stay with this. It had to go to 5 lanes or we'd be in gridlock by some year. And what I thought we passed was a widening, and it was very close, but a widening between 1st Avenue and 3rd Avenue. We have since, and this is an aside, but had a guy that's an expert come in here and tell us that a 3-laner would work just fine there. I think it's our staff who was really pushing for this. I don't think PCI even cares about this widening. And so imagine, I was pretty frustrated when I saw 34. I had no idea that Dr. Wagdy would come forward on this, but I was frustrated anyway, because to spend $300,000 to acquire this property and then the additional whatever we're spending to cut that curb and make that wider there leaves me extremely frustrated, especially if our motion was between first and third, which I believe it was. I could be remembering this wrong, and if I am remembering it wrong, I'm still not in favor of it, because I think by the time we cut that curb and do the work on it, it's going to be $1 million for something we don't need. And I think it just, once again, more hard surface, more ugliness. Then this guy's got a problem. He wants more dollars from us because of our additional need for parking. So, this is a really good example of what we continue to put ourselves in when we cut these curbs because we got to run on that A level so no one ever has to wait 1 second anywhere. So I'm 100% opposed to this. And if we just stop this nonsense now, his problem goes away, lots of our problems go away. I think we have more money in the budget. And I am 100% opposed to number 34.
Councilman Olson?
Yes, I just maybe a little level of explanation why that sheet was in there. I'm the founder, one of the founders of the Ecumenical Community Center in 1995. It was founded right there on 3rd Avenue, and the cardiologists have been a very good neighbor over the years. And then with the floods and the creation of PCI, we've moved our facilities, 601, 605 2nd Avenue, and rebuilt that and have a great facility there. But one facility that was not moved was Margaret Bach Housing. That was a former correction center, and it was one of the original part of the projects donated by Ed Bach and in memory of his wife. And that has it's been rebuilt. It's got 32 single occupancy residence units in it, which is a unique program in the state of Iowa. When this came forward, this now has a separate board. I am not on that board. I'm still on the Ecumenical board. I agreed to help sort of mediate is not the right word, but assist the Margaret Bach Housing Board and Dr. Wagdy and his group in trying to figure out how we solve this problem with the street widening. And unfortunately, there's no place for these 32 in the unit. There's 32 units. They're full, and there's no place for these people to go. And the group, that board, refused to sell unless there was a plan and adequate dollars to relocate. And so that's where these numbers came up with, was a plan that board would consider with a phased-out program that they could move these individuals to other areas in the community in over a year's period of time, and then that building could also be torn down and convert to parking. That's where that number came up. It's not tied to how much that street strip is worth. It's just the swap. That's what that costs because of the type of housing. So with Monica, I sort of agree. When you add up all of the costs, it's getting pretty well up there to get a few extra feet on that street because we had to jog around IC Church. To make that work. So I think what we need to do is...
Well, I'm going to interrupt you,
yes.
Councilman. I appreciate the background, but if you did recuse yourself from the vote, then you probably should recuse yourself from the discussion then.
Okay, I will from that. I just wanted to give the history, so right, thank you very much, Mayor.
Councilman Swore, followed by Councilman Julich, then Councilman Shea.
Thank you, Your Honor. My memory isn't the greatest, but I think I concur with Monica that I thought it stopped at 3rd Avenue. And I also remember the discussions about what we were having to do for IC's entrance, and I think this must be a result of some replotting, if you will, of the of what they thought the street could be widened on the side over on IC's side. I also think it's crazy for us to even give a consideration to spending the kind of money that would be required to achieve this particular layout.
Thank you, Councilman Swart. Councilman Julik, followed by Councilman Shea, then Councilman Carr.
Just a couple pieces of information, because I look back on our meeting that we had on the parking back in January 23rd, and medical facilities such as this, they said some of the manuals had this actually as available, that the standards could be as low as 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So that would still be able to fall into this, from a parking standpoint. Separate issue to some degree. The other question I have is, I don't know, I think maybe like Councilman Swore, this is the transition from the 5 to the 4 that has to happen unless you stop the width of 10th Street earlier. So I guess I'd ask us to get a little bit of information from the city engineer who was working on that, so that we can make sure that we understand that a little bit, because you can't just stop, go 5 lanes and it's 4 lanes. There has to be some kind of transition, and that's maybe what this is, but I don't know.
You want to bring him forward now?
That'd be good if we could get
Dave
a little
Elgin?
more information on it, just from a background.
Thank you. Dave, did you hear Councilman Julik's question?
Yes, I did, Your Honor, and Councilmember Julik is correct. This is a transition zone, but I will say that the design that is proposed is based on the approved site plan of PCI. Staff has not looked at that to determine if that transition can be accomplished more efficiently in some manner. We'd be glad to do that, and there's no reason that there needs to be action on this item today. Staff can certainly come back with the options on how to accommodate that transition in some other fashion.
Chris, any follow-up questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. Next would have Councilman Shea, followed by Councilman Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. And maybe this is a city attorney question. What is the process? So we're referring this to the Compensation Commission, and then they look at what we've offered and what they've countered, and really to come up with a dollar amount. Is that basically what this is about? I mean, I had the chance to speak with a good doctor last week, and it sounds like money's not really the issue. It's really the issue of parking spaces. And so I'm not sure how that gets resolved in this, because, as he said rather in a funny way, that, okay, he's going to get a variance to have fewer parking places, but he doesn't know if his patients will appreciate the fact that they now have a variance, and their parking lot, reduced parking lot, meets all city requirements, and they might have to park blocks away. So, to me, it's we're talking about something that maybe can't be compensated monetarily. I know that you can put a price on anything, but I was just kind of raising that question, that I don't think that's really what the Compensation Commission doesn't act as an arbiter with a full range of remedies available. They're just going to pick a dollar amount that they believe is fair. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. But I agree with Monica. I see this, and I think, I look at how Mount Vernon Road changed when they widened that, and how businesses were impacted. And at the end of the day, we have a business. You might be a medical practice, but at the end of the day, it's a business. It's a successful business. It has a devoted clientele, and at the end of the day, they need parking places. When he tells me they need the parking places, I believe that. I'm not sure that Walmart needs as many parking places as they have, but I truly believe that. So, this gives me heartburn for all the reasons other members have said, and it's just one of those repercussions from that earlier discussion we had about traffic patterns, and especially in light of Jeff Speck's visit, it becomes all the more painful that maybe we're making a mistake here. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Pat. Councilman Carr?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I've got on this council, and I'm getting really confused because how I was raised and how I think. And I've been against this project with PCI since the beginning. We're giving all these favors to a nonprofit who pays no property taxes. This gentleman's paid how many thousands of dollars in property taxes? We've affected other businesses on that street who pay property taxes. I was against closing 2nd Avenue. We've been lied to several times on how this project's going to move forward. And I'm getting to wonder, as a citizen, and a council member. We give land to Matthew 25, a nonprofit. What happened to the separation of church and state? And now we're giving a St. Luke's Hospital all this money, taxpayers' money, widen the street for them, who pay taxes, and these people don't. I'm getting really confused as a council person on what my purpose up here is to do for the tax-paying citizens of this community. And for us to put this doctor in a position who pays property taxes to have to go through this is obnoxious. It's obnoxious to give PCI all this land who's non-for-profit, who pay no property taxes. I'm getting really confused as a council person up here. What are we doing giving all these nonprofits all this money and land and using taxpayers, citizens, my tax dollars, to do this? I worked hard as a business owner. I paid my property taxes. I still pay my property taxes. Nobody's ever given me a break. Shouldn't we have a little separation of church and state, a little separation of nonprofit and profit in this friggin' city government? I'm not for this, and I'm getting kind of tired of this.
Thank you, Councilman Carr. Well, we have item number 34 before us, but I don't have a motion or a second at this point in time. Seeing there's no motion on the floor, then that it dies for lack of a motion. That moves us to item number 41 on the agenda, report on bids for 1st Street, 24th Avenue, Haven Court, Southwest Water Main Replacement Project. Pat Ball.
Thank you, Mayor. Pat Ball, Utilities Director. Yes, this water main project, we received 5 bids on April 11th. They are shown on the screen. The low bid was from Dave Schmidt Construction of Cedar Rapids in the amount of $427,475.60. The engineer's estimate on this was $512,000, and we would recommend awarding to the low bid.
Thank you, Pat. Is there any questions of Pat? Seeing none, it's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That moves us item number 42. This is also a report on bids for the cleaning, repairing, and painting of 4 MMG Steel Ground Storage Reservoir, Chandler Street Reservoir Project. Pat?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is the report on bids for the Chandler repainting project. 9 bids were received on April 11th. The low bid was by Champion Coatings, Inc. of Savage, Minnesota, in the amount of $248,000, and we would recommend awarding to the low bid.
Thank you, Pat. Is there any questions for Pat? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That moves us to item number 43 on the agenda, report on bids from the CRW PCF D1 clarifier rehabilitation and DAFT A and B improvement project. Pat?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this project is for our D1 clarifier and 2 of our dissolved air flotation thickeners. We received 6 bids on April 11th. Excuse me. The low bid was by Rice Lake Construction Group of Deerwood, Minnesota, in the amount of $2,314,600. Engineer's estimate on this was $2,350,000, and we would recommend awarding to the low bid.
Thank you, Pat. Are there any questions for Pat on this? It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Council. That moves us to item number 40 and item number 45. These report on bids for the Mohawk Park Water Service Project. Steve?
Steve Krug, Parks and Recreation Department. Here to report on bids for the Mohawk Park Water Service Project. We received bids for this project from one bid from BG Brecky for $35,000. The estimate was $50,000. We recommend approving this and approving this contract for BG Brecky.
All right. Yeah, Steve, do you have the agenda item that you can post up for the public to see? Nick, can someone help him with that real quick? Are there any questions of Steve while we're doing that? Councilman Swore?
Steve, any idea why we only had one bid?
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is
lack interest, or
partially lack of interest, and partially that a lot of these contractors are already get into their busy season due to the early spring, and some of it also had to do with the boring that had to be done to go underneath the Union Pacific Railroad there, and the requirements of the Union Pacific Railroad to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank.
Been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That moves us to the number 45, report on bids for the Manhattan Pavilion Ellis Park project. Steve?
Here to report on bids, resolution awarding and approving contract in the amount of $89,317 for the Manhattan Pavilion Ellis Park project for the Dean Driscoll Construction. We received 2 bids for this project. Low bid was Dean Driscoll Construction. We recommend contract moving forward for this project.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions of Steve? Monica?
Dean, you got to name what the other one is, I think, or show it. Oh, here it is. Oh, it came up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Monica. It's been
approval.
moved by Swore, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That closes out all of our regular agenda items. We have a few ordinances to take care of with Councilman Julick's help. Item number 46, ordinance vacating public ways and grounds in and to the property described as 4,872 square foot parcel of right-of-way located in the formerly existing 14th Avenue Southwest easterly and adjacent to the 12th Avenue Southwest as requested by the City of Cedar Rapids. We had voted on this previously, Council, so this would be the second, possible third reading. Do I have a motion to approve? It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries.
I move we waive the rule requiring 3 readings on 3 separate dates and approve this on its third and final reading.
It's been moved by Julick, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Move approval of the resolution.
It's been moved by Julick, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. That moves us to the item number 47. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 61 of the Municipal Code. This is traffic regulations by adding a definition for school zones in Section 61.001, establishing speed restrictions on various streets in Section 61.029, and amending verbiage in Section 61.066. We previously adopted this unanimously. This is the second, third reading. It's been moved by Vernon, seconded by Carr. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries.
I move we waive the rule requiring 3 readings on 3 separate dates and approve this on its third and final reading.
Thank you. It's been moved by Julick, seconded by Vernon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. We have a second public comment section that comes at the end of the meeting, and we didn't have anyone sign up for that this evening, so that closes out the second public comment section. That would bring us to any council, or Jeff, do you have any final words? Thank you. Monica?
Council, I chair the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we're basically a group that includes Cedar Rapids, Marion, Hiawatha, Robbins, Fairfax, and Lynn County. And I just need to make sure that I clarify here that we had a motion this past week to spend more money on bike lanes and trails. And the Metropolitan Planning Organization is a transportation group. We get some dollars from the federal government, about $3 million a year. And it's we're supposed to come up with systems that serve car drivers, bike riders, pedestrians, and transit riders, so that we have a full system in our community. And I think after a lot of thought, probably about 2 years of discussion, the group voted, I think it was our neighborhood reporter here might be able to help me, I think it was 15-4, to fund more dollars for bike lanes and to some degree trails, because we were found in a study to be deficit in alternative forms of transportation. Previously, we'd spent a lot of the money for a number of decades on street widening projects, and it was really felt that it's time for us to get into the bike lane deal a little bit more heavily. So I would be happy to continue to answer any questions from the public on this, or any questions from any council members who haven't been part of that meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Councilman Carr, do you have any
I have a little city business. Scott, you should have not voted. You went to Matthew 25. That was a conflict of interest. You should have took your vote off. It's unethical.
You know, Councilman Shields moves we adjourn, seconded by Swore. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. We're adjourned.
Utility assessments.
I don't know. Hey, Dave.